Hello and welcome to Faith Matters. On this special edition of the show, we're profiling our regular host, Revd Keith Hitchman. Hi Keith, welcome to Faith Matters.
Thank you.
It took you a while to arrive in Liverpool. You're not a native of the city, so can you tell us how you got here?
Okay, the story of coming to Liverpool is I'm from London originally, so I'm a West Ham supporter. I have to get that in as the first thing. But I was in Cheltenham before I came here, where for 10 years, where for 5 of those 10 years I was chaplain to the University of Gloucestershire, and then for 5 years I was an associate vicar at a large church and head of mission there. I was kind of recruited to the role of the head of, or the leader of River in the City by Bishop James, who was the Bishop of Liverpool at the time, and that's how I've come to be here. But I think it's right to say that I felt called to Liverpool from the moment I arrived, and I remember coming with my wife to Liverpool on the day that I came to look around, and it was a shock really, because I thought to myself, why, I've never been to Liverpool before, why didn't anyone tell me it was this good?
What is it you love about this city, Keith? What is it that brought you to Liverpool?
Well, I think there's a number of things. I've got like I said, I come from London, but I've got an Irish background going back a few sort of centuries and a few generations. I grew up in Cornwall, so I've always had a strong Celtic affiliation. And Liverpool's a very Celtic city, so I think there was something that I related to there in the sort of Celtic nature of the city. I kind of say, I'm probably not the first person to say it, but I think it is a city that faces Dublin before it faces London. There's a strong sense of faith and spirituality here, which I related to immediately. And then there's all the things that Liverpool is famous for, and all those things are true. It is a city with lovely people, friendly people who talk to each other on the street and on public transport. It's a city of life and culture. It's a city that has a passion for footy. I just felt at home straight away. I felt it was the place I'd always been trying to get to for the last 20 odd years, really.
And so obviously, you saw this, and so then you settled here, how long have you been settled here now?
5.5 years now. And, I've got 2 sons. They're both thoroughly Scouseified. My accent hasn't changed, but theirs has.
Why did you choose a career in the church?
Well, it was quite a long time ago. So I was ordained in 1995, so it's 20 years ago. After I left school, I kind of ligged around a bit, to be honest, and went from job to job, and was more interested in having a good time than having a career, and didn't really know what to do, like a lot of young people, really. And it was back in the bad old days of Thatcher and that recession, so it was a hard time to get a job. I grew up in what I would say was a fairly religious home. But I had a Damascus Road kind of experience in my 20s and became a committed Christian. And immediately it was a bit like coming to Liverpool. I knew this is what I've got to do. This is what I'm made for. And that is the nature of a calling, certainly of my calling, that I just knew, like I said, it was what I was made to do.
Oh, do you mind me asking, what was the Damascus Road experience that kind of... Or is that too personal? Or?
No. I'd led I'm not going to go into detail, but I led a fairly dissolute life, put it that way. And I was at the end, really, of, I was in my mid-20s, but I was pretty confused. I was pretty messed up. And I met some Christians who looked like me, actually, that I could relate to. The church people in my parents' generation, I certainly couldn't relate to, and I was rebelling against them, my parents, and that whole kind of respectability thing. And but I met some Christians who looked like me that I could relate to, who told me about Jesus as a radical, as a revolutionary figure. And I saw it in a completely new light, and my life was transformed overnight.
And so you've been in the church institution 20 years now?
Yeah, I've been an ordained priest in the Church of England for 20 years.
You never had a church. Why is that?
No, I've always been a member of a local church, and I'm passionate about that. And I think my role is outside the church, and always has been over the last 20 years, really. I've had roles that have been what I would call outward facing. I think that has something to do with my background. So I had that sort of 10 years or so where I was certainly outside of sort of church and church culture, and it actually on the edge of society, really, at that time. And I've always had a calling, really, is to take the message of the gospel, beyond the walls of the church. And that's what I've done. But I've done that in different ways. So I've been a chaplain. I was a university chaplain. As I mentioned, I was chaplain to Merseyside Police for 4 years when I first arrived here in the city, as well, alongside the River in the City post. I've worked for churches as a head of mission and as an outreach priest, if you like. That's basically what I've done.
What exactly is River in the City? Can you tell us a bit more about River in the City's origin, its mission?
Okay, River in the City is an evolving thing. Came to lead it, as I said, in 2010 as an initiative of the Diocese of Liverpool. And the idea was to find it's part of a national approach to mission, again, which is outward facing. So the idea behind River in the City is to find new and creative and innovative ways of engaging with professional life, really, in the city centre. Someone said of me recently that they thought I was a bit like a consultant, like a kind of business consultant, if you like, although I'm not a business person and I haven't got that background. So I'm because I'm always trying to use kind of secular language to describe what I'm doing, I now describe River in the City as a consultancy service which is dedicated to the building of social and spiritual capital. So there's different forms of capital, economic capital and physical capital. But what we're about is primarily spiritual capital, building spiritual capital and social capital. So introducing spirituality and encouraging spirituality within the professional life of the city, and encouraging the social implications, if you like, of a spiritual life in people's lives and in the lives of companies and businesses and organisations.
I mean, why is the church seeking to engage with professional people in this way?
I think historically we've always done that, but I think maybe over recent years we've kind of stepped back from that. And I think that, for many years we've always had chaplains out there in hospitals and, like I said, in the police service and educational establishments and to business and to the to the economy. But I think that we're in a different kind of situation now, that we're in a much more pluralistic and secularized society. And I think we no longer have the right just to be in these places. We kind of have to earn the right, and we have to think more creatively about how we do this. And as I said, that it's a national approach. This is a national approach of looking at for new ways of being church. And that could be new congregations. We are probably one of the leading dioceses in the Church of England in this area. There are people out there planting and leading and forming new churches. The kind of stuff that I'm doing with my colleague Laura Pasterfield in the Baltic Triangle is finding new ways of connecting and being the church among people.
What would you say is the difference between this form of ministry and traditional chaplaincy?
Well, I wouldn't want to speak ill of traditional chaplaincy. I think it's had a place and still has a place. It's an important ministry. And as I've said, I've been a chaplain. I've been a university chaplain and I've been a police chaplain, and I'd want to affirm those kind of roles and the people that are in those roles. But I think the situation we're in now is quite different, that there have obviously been chaplains in all areas of public life for many, many years, in fact going back centuries really. But when those chaplaincies were formed, when the idea of chaplaincy came into being, it was when the church was much more at the centre of society than perhaps we are now. And I think it was predicated on the fact that we had a right to be there. And we live in a much more pluralistic and secular society now. Well, I don't think we automatically have that right, and we shouldn't perhaps expect that right. There's other religions out there of people of no faith and no religion. But I do think we have a role, and I think as the state church, Church of England has a role. I personally think we need to think differently about how we do that. So somebody asked me the other day, they said, are you a chaplain? You know, is your role a chaplain? And my answer was that I think there are many people out there, friends of mine, in public life in Liverpool who relate to me as a chaplain, but they wouldn't use that term. They might not even know what it means. But what I mean by that is that I know them through a professional context, through serving alongside them on maybe a committee or a board, or being involved in an event, and they now would speak to me about their personal lives, and I would offer to pray with them and offer them some counsel, and they're friends. So I think any sort of pastoral role is relational. You need a relationship with somebody. You can't just assume that you're going to be able to speak into somebody's life.
How did you get involved in Bay TV and presenting Faith Matters?
Well, I mean, this relates to what we've just been talking about, really, because a friend of mine in the city, I think Chris, was looking to have some religious broadcasting on Bay TV, and another friend of mine in the city knew Chris, and this person said to Chris, why don't you talk to Keith? He's out and about in the city. Maybe somebody could offer you some advice. And so we met up at the Athenaeum Club, and I said, I always fancied doing a bit of TV, and can I have a go? I can try and bring in some people that I know, and we'll try and create a program. So I'd never done anything like this before, and Chris was, kind enough to offer me that opportunity. So that's how it came about. So again, we're back to this relational thing. It's about being in a friendship with somebody, and getting to know people and networking, and that whole kind of thing.
Having hosted Faith Matters for just over a year now, how do you feel it has gone? I mean, has it been a rewarding process for you? Oh,
it's been great. It's been one of the best things I've ever done, really, I think. And I think, like what you've just said, it's been an opportunity to bring people in, showcase ministries and things that people are doing, not just within the Christian faith, although, I'm a follower of Jesus, and I'm open about that, and I want as many people to know about Jesus and what he offers, what he taught as possible. But it was great to bring in, it is great to bring in people of other faith traditions, other religious traditions, of no tradition. We've had atheists on a number of programmes, and I think it's just been great to do that and show people that, there's a different side to this.
Through your encounters with various people, do you find their experience of God differs? And to be clearer on that, I mean it in terms of there are people who perceive God as domineering, someone who is just to be told how marvellous he is. Then there's a God who, for us, is someone to praise, not necessarily because he needs it, but because we do it for ourselves. There's a God who is the essence of love, a friend, a guide who is there when we seek to contact him, who wants our commitment, but only on the condition of total freedom. Or there is a God who is not a thing, not a person, but more of a feeling, an awareness that the universe is ordered, meaningful, and gives us a connection that's so fulfilling. One doesn't need anything else. I mean, what is exactly, your experience of God?
Okay, I think I'd start by saying this, and I think this informs all that I do. I think that people don't. I think people don't like religion much, particularly in our society. I think they have less of a problem with the notion of the divine, and I think most people, a lot of people, actually quite like Jesus, what they know about Jesus, and the more they would read about Jesus in the Gospels, they kind of like that. They kind of like what he stood for. So, I think you got a lot of it right there. What you read out from your notes, which is what you think and believe is. I believe that I'm a Christian. I'm a follower of Jesus because that's what a Christian means. I believe that there is a God, and that God is personal, and that God. Our God came into a human being in a particular point in history. We're recording this just before Christmas. The theological term for that is the incarnation. That human being was Jesus. I think that was a unique event. That doesn't mean that the leaders of other world religions didn't speak knowledgeably about God, or what they said about God was true, or what they said about the divine was true. But I think uniquely there was a point in history in which the divine came into a human being, and that person Jesus was both human and divine, uniquely so, and that he came to teach us about the way we should live, and that he came to model something about the way we should live. So it's not just information. There's some practice that he modelled. He gathered some people around him. He then sent that small group of people out to live out what he taught and to teach what he taught, and it became a movement. And then, unfortunately, I think historically that was institutionalised, and that's probably where we've, it's a long story, and I'm not a church historian, but that's where the problems have come in. But I think that message, I think we're getting back to that core message in our day. We're being forced to, as society is becoming deinstitutionalised, and institutional religion is just not what people want. So we're being forced. It's a good thing to get back to that core message of Jesus, which is a message of love, which has common ground with all the world religions and many other kind of belief systems, and with people of no belief. There's a big conversation to be had there. But I'm a passionate believer in Jesus. I find religion difficult enough. If I didn't believe in Jesus, if I didn't actually believe this stuff, I wouldn't be doing this. Yeah, I think. I've done some training in the past where with in a corporate setting where I've used the teachings of Jesus with people who don't necessarily believe in Jesus, and I've been open about that. But I think that and what I've said to people, I think that there are many people out there living those values, because we live in a society that's shaped by the gospel over hundreds of years. So those values are seeped into our society. And I think there's many people living out those values. I don't think you have to be a Christian to live out those values. But I think that there is something unique that Jesus offers us. And I think it's a transformative thing. I think when you invite Jesus into when Jesus invites himself into your life, that it transforms you. I can only speak from my personal experience, and I think that is the experience of many millions of people, or billions of people across the centuries.
Taking into consideration everything you've said, how do we bridge the dislocation of what is in the Gospels, which have strong resonance, and relate that to everyday experience, which helps people in their spiritual understanding and development?
We have to create a bridge, I think, between the Gospels and the time that they were written and the times we're living in now. If we don't do that, there is a disconnect. People can't connect with it because it was a long time ago. It was 2,000 years ago. It was an ancient culture, and we need to faithfully interpret the teachings of Jesus and the way of Jesus into our context and culture, and that is not an easy thing to do. The longer I go at this thing, sometimes I think the harder it gets, you know, because we live in a very complex society. But I think if we always undergird it with love and grace, then we can kind of make it happen, you know, one person at a time, if that makes sense.
Keith, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Neil. It's been great to talk to you.